It's the people versus the powerful.
You saw it here on Oklahoma Chronicle. Oklahoma City Mayor David Holt calling for a massive change in how we elect our leaders statewide.
If you poll Oklahomans, they talk about the economy and education, public safety and health care. That's what the candidates should be talking about. That's what the candidates would be talking about if State Question 836 were to become law.
Holt says open primaries are the key to better candidates, better leadership, and better results for Oklahoma.
You know, when you've got all these elected officials saying they don't want it, that's the biggest red flag to the voters of Oklahoma that this is exactly what we need.
Today on Oklahoma Chronicle, the other side of this debate. Why many believe open primaries are dangerous to the Sooner State.
Stories beyond the headlines, connected to our state. Oklahoma Chronicle with Evan Onstadt.
Thanks so much for being with us here this week as we are once again talking about an effort to bring open primaries to Oklahoma. This is State Question 836. Let's put it on the screen. What would happen if it were to go to the ballot? Right now they are gathering signatures. And what would happen if it were passed? If it were passed, all candidates for state elections in the future would face off in one primary. So they'd all be on there regardless of what party they would be. They would have their party signature there, but they would all be in the same primary. And then the top two of those, they would move on to the general election, again, regardless of party. You could have two Republicans, you could have two Democrats, two independents. You understand. And here to talk about it, we did have the Mayor David Holt of Oklahoma City on in favor of this before the holiday. Joining us here is Dave Bond with OCPA, the Oklahoma Council of Public Affairs. Back with us, I should say, I believe for the third time, Dave. It's so nice to have you here. Thank you.
Thanks, Evan, so much.
You are strongly opposed, not just you, but many conservatives, and of course your organization as well. And I guess I just wanted to start off with the question, because this is really what it all comes down to, I think. Are Oklahoma elections broken currently?
I don't think so. I think an election system should try to, the outcomes of it should reflect its state. So when you look at Oklahoma's elections, we do have a lot of Republicans in office right now, a lot of conservative-leaning Republicans, depending on how you judge that. We're also the only state in the union where for the last 6 presidential elections, every single county has voted Republican. So to have Republicans then in statewide office, to have a majority Republican legislature, to have a lot of county offices held by Republicans is not somehow weird or unusual. It matches up with what the presidential results look like in Oklahoma pretty well.
Are conservatives in Oklahoma, many of them, opposing this measure to bring open primaries because they feel that it could threaten that it could lead to less conservatives getting these wins that they're getting now, or perhaps that it would be a less conservative person ending up victorious in the general election?
I think a lot of conservatives and other folks too are concerned about State Question 836 because of what they've seen it produce in other states. It's really important, I think, for folks to understand, and the more that folks do understand this, the more skeptical they become of supporting it. It's not a feel-good open primary system like what neighboring states have in Texas or Arkansas or Missouri, where you go vote in the party primary that you want to vote in, or independents are allowed to do that, but if you're registered for a party, you have to vote for that party's primary, but independents have some flexibility. And
where there's still separate primaries,
right,
that are held by the parties themselves.
Right, it's not that at all. Only 2 states do right now what State Question 836 would do, California and Washington State, 2 West Coast states, and it's extremely different from that, and it's had a couple of very noticeable effects since they've put it in place within the last 20 years. All
right, like what are those effects that you think would be bad for Oklahoma?
Right. So the first really big one is it severely limits voters' choices in the election times of year when the vast majority of voters do their voting, which is November. In most states in the country, including California and including Oklahoma, roughly double the number of people vote in November compared to the primary, because November is for all the marbles. That's the way American election systems work. That has not changed in California, by the way. It was that way before they did this, and it's still the case today, even more so actually now. And so what California and what State Question 836 would do is it severely restricts voters' choices in that November general election. You get 2 people to choose from. And like you said a minute ago, they might both be from the same party. In California, they often are. Sometimes 2 Republicans, sometimes 2 Democrats. Either way, the voter isn't getting a lot to choose from. Excuse me. Right now in Oklahoma, when you go to vote for governor, you have a Democrat to choose from, in November, a Democrat, a Republican, a Libertarian, probably 2 or 3 independents as well. You're talking about 3, 4, 5 different
And they
options
can all
to choose
be on
from.
that November ballot. I know that
Right.
somebody who's pushing for open primaries would argue, though, yeah, sure, they're all there in November, but really, everybody knows in Oklahoma the race was determined in that Republican primary. That it is because of, as you said, this is a conservative state with a lot of conservative voters, that a lot of Republicans, whoever comes out of that Republican primary is going to be the winner of a statewide race. And that's how they would push back against what you're saying, the choice, the more choice you'd have in November.
Yeah, but that's often not how it has played out in Oklahoma, at least in my lifetime since I've been an eligible age voter. I mean, we've often, like Brad Henry became governor in a situation where you had a really strong independent run and purposefully try to take away vote share from the Republican, Steve Largent, and Brad Henry became the governor for that reason. So a strong independent candidate or third party candidate in Oklahoma has proven that they can have a very strong impact on the outcome here. I would say we're maybe even overdue for a scenario like that in the upcoming governor's race, just because it's been a while since it has happened, not because of one candidate or another being a certain way, but that happens in Oklahoma from time to time. We have become, when I first started voting, most races were 2-candidate races in November in Oklahoma. But over the course of my lifetime here, we've gradually, through effort, broaden that out. So now in November, when double the number of people vote, you really have a broader array of choices as a voter. And this would totally strip that away.
I want to give you a chance to respond to something that Mayor Holt also said, which, by the way, I encourage you, if you haven't seen it, you can check that out. It's online on our website, on our Facebook. You can find it. But he said that this would be the people versus the powerful, that the current system distorts democracy in the state. I know you saw the interview. You reached out to me right after it aired. How do you respond to that?
I would say if you just want the 2 major parties to have candidates on the November ballot, then State Question 836 is a great way to go. But if you actually want other options, if you want third-party candidates to choose from, if you want independent candidates to choose from, you won't have that anymore with State Question 836.
Not in November.
Not in November when people actually go and do their voting. No.
But does it give those third-party candidates more of a chance if they're in a primary that is set up like this?
Oh gosh, no. I mean, this is the way things are structured now in Oklahoma is the only way a third party or independent candidate can actually be on the November ballot when you actually have exposure to twice as many voters. If they're lumped into the primary with the strong Democrat candidates, the strong Republican candidates, they're going to get overpowered by that. And remember, like you said, it's just the top 2 vote getters regardless of party. Those independents and third party folks won't have a chance.
Another thing I want you to respond to is the argument, and I understand, when you ask people about politics, they will say a lot of times they're just concerned about winning. We need people that are going to be meeting in the middle and getting things done, and that everybody, is that the current system, the people who are pushing for open primaries are saying that we are getting extreme candidates on the right and on the left because they have to win the primary, and then those are the people that end up winning.
Okay.
Would we get better candidates in an open primary system where people from the very beginning have to be campaigning for all Oklahomans to potentially vote?
That sure sounds nice, but the 2 states that do this, that has not been the reality. Because remember, you don't have to appeal to everybody to get out of that jungle primary in the summertime when you've got 15, 20, 25, 30 candidates for a single race. You just have to appeal to a big enough chunk of the extreme to get a plurality to get to November. That's all you have to do.
Because you're saying that it's still the very politically savvy, perhaps the more, fervent conservatives, fervent liberals who are still the ones voting in the primary. Is that your argument on that? That hasn't changed who's really voting in these primary elections.
Candidates in California and Washington have shown that that's their best odds of making November is to appeal to big enough blocks of those. And so the rhetoric actually gets more extreme. There was a recent Ivy League study, not some Oklahoma or Texas study, Ivy League study that shows that of the 50 states, the 2 with the most polarized political climates in the country, it's not Oklahoma, it's not Mississippi, it's California and Washington State, because they are the 2 states that still have election systems that encourage candidates to go extreme, encourage candidates to go to the fringe to get enough of that plurality to make it to November. That's why California is passing environmental laws that are producing results that are driving up the cost of living so high that normal people just can't take it anymore. They have more people leaving the state than anybody else. It's producing all these wildfire situations that are totally out of control. All of these wild things that you hear about from California are products of their election system.
All right, we're out of time, but I just want to ask you quickly. Mayor Holt said that he expects, if it does get to the ballot, because we're having this conversation, it might not get the signatures, but if it does get there, Mayor Holt thinks that the people will support this. What do you think Oklahoma would do?
I think Oklahomans like their state. I think as more Oklahomans recognize that this is a way to make Oklahoma into something else, to try to bring in California's election system. It's being pushed by a group from New York City, literally New York City, called Open Primaries. That's the group that came in here and initiated the process.
Right, they're trying to do this around the country.
They are,
yeah.
And they see Oklahoma as an opportunity to do that. I think when Oklahomans realize this is an attempt to change Oklahoma's makeup, they'll be like, by distorting elections and making chaotic elections, they won't want any part of that.
Dave Bond is with OCPA. Dave, always good to see you. Thanks so much for being back here on the show. Absolutely.